Mother thinks she has rights to my child and treats him like a doll to show off. Honestly, I just need a place to vent. My mother is the entitled parent in this story. She and I have never had a great relationship. She resented me growing up because she was a single mom and never wanted children. She would never spend time or engage with me and would instead throw money at me to show she cared. Now I'm grown up and independent and just had a baby of my own, and she feels entitled to my son. I have made certain decisions about his upbringing that I'm trying to adhere to. Nothing crazy, just trying to avoid using unnecessary products on him. No baby lotion, no diaper cream unless he gets a rash, homemade baby food, etc. He's now 4 months old and it has been working well for us. My mother is very insistent that she gets to see him 2 to 3 times a week. She refers to herself as Glama, a mix of glam and grandma, and has already procured a few items that say best grandma ever. I have been very hesitant to let her watch him for extended periods of time. I didn't have the best upbringing and honestly believe she would not do what's best for my son. She has always been a very materialistic person and extremely concerned about the image she presents to other people. So I get anxious thinking of him staying overnight at her place. She keeps asking for him to spend the night, saying she's doing it for me because I need the sleep. But I know it's because she likes the novelty of having a baby around. She first started asking for him to spend the night at her place when he was 2 weeks old. I have said no every time. When she was first allowed to babysit him, I had to set ground rules because she kept trying to plan parties whenever he was over. She was trying to show him off to all her friends and neighbors. The thing is, he is a baby. Large groups of people are not good for babies because their immune systems are weak, and our city has had a number of measles outbreaks. I had to tell her repeatedly that she couldn't be inviting groups of strangers over to pass him around like a doll. She finally agreed and I let him spend a few hours at her place. Still she kept asking for him to spend the night. She also calls me every day asking when he is going to visit her again and offering to take him off my hands for a few days like he is an inconvenience. My husband had to go to BC for a wedding, so I was alone for a week. It was hard. 6 days into it and I was at the end of my rope. I had barely had any adult interaction and had only slept 3 hours a day. So I call my mother up and ask her if my son and I can spend the night at her place. I needed sleep but didn't want to leave him there without me all night. I figured this would be a good compromise. I would be available if anything went wrong and she would get off my back about him staying over. She had been nagging me for weeks about how I should just give him Pablum and he would sleep through the night. He was a preemie and our pediatrician said to wait for solids, but she thought she knew best. I had to constantly tell her not to feed him anything but his milk. The night came where I was supposed to go to her place. I get there and there are 15 other people over. Turns out she was having a dinner party. Whether or not she had this arranged before I asked to come over, I don't know. I told her my son goes to bed at 8 and you really need to sleep. She assured me everyone would be gone by 9. That didn't happen. They ended up starting a bonfire and she's trying to get me to sit by the fire with my son. I tell her I don't want him around all that smoke, he's only 4 months old. So he needs to stay in the house, besides it's 8 and he needs to go to bed. She tells me I'm being unreasonable and should just let him sleep by the fire. I put my foot down and say no. He ends up in his bassinet and I'm waiting for the party to be done so I can sleep. Because my husband has been gone and I have been dealing with the baby on my own for 6 days, my sleep schedule has been completely out of whack. I was hoping to take some sleeping pills to get a good night's rest since she was going to watch him through the night. So now I'm waiting for her to come in and take over for me. 10 rolls around and she pops in for a drink before heading back out. I ask her again how late the party is going to go since I am desperate to get some sleep. She tells me it should be over soon again, and that she can't stay in the house because she has guests over and she needs to entertain them. 10:45 comes and she's still at the bonfire. Again she comes in to grab something and she sees that I'm still up. She tells me I'm being silly and should just go to sleep. She doesn't seem to understand that I have insomnia and need to take sleeping pills and can't do that until someone else can watch my son. The someone being her, since I asked and she offered. I reminded her that I was there to sleep and was waiting for her. She then tells me I'm being ungrateful since she had this party planned and she couldn't just ask everyone to leave. She said I should just go to sleep and not worry about my son so much. I tell her she can't be taking care of him if she's outside, she wouldn't even hear him if he woke up. She said I should stop stressing that people will leave soon, and went back to her party. 11:30 comes around and I am so tired I start crying. I can't sleep and I wasn't getting the help I asked for. I decided to just take my son and go home. If I was doing it on my own, I'd rather be around my own things and in my own bed. I packed him up and sent her a text saying she was too preoccupied to watch my son and that we were going home. She didn't even see my message until 12:30. How well could she have watched him if she didn't leave her bonfire until then? I ended up getting a string of messages saying it was unfair of me to take him away. That I shouldn't say she didn't care because she spent $700 on him that day, so obviously she cared. I never mentioned anything about caring or not caring. She said I was being ungrateful because if I had stayed by she would have been able to sleep in the morning while she took care of him. I don't trust for 1 minute that she would have done right by him. Her guests were taking up all her time. A week goes by and she asks twice again if he can stay the night at her place. I have no faith in her watching him overnight, but I agree to let her watch him during the day Saturday. She says she's going to sleep in but should pick him up around 9 or 10. 11 rolls around and I haven't heard from her. I give her a call and she says she just got home and that they can't pick him up until later, so I should just drop him off at her place. She was supposed to pick him up because she lives 30 minutes out of town on an acreage, but drives right past our house when she goes shopping. I try telling her it is too inconvenient to drive him to her place, I'll just keep him with me. But she wears me down and I eventually make the drive out to her place. I tell her I'll pick him up in the evening around 9:30 or 10. At 5 I get a text from her saying she's decided to have a bonfire and has invited a bunch of people over. Seriously? The exact same thing as the week before. And tell her again I don't want my son sitting out in the hot sun or hanging around the smoke from the fire. I tell her I don't care what she does, but I will pick up my son if she can't watch him. She tells me she is watching him and that I don't need to take him. I went to get him and I was pissed off. I have asked her time and again not to have him around groups of strangers, but to have him around smoke, and she just won't listen. I didn't even want to send him to her place, but she just kept nagging that she should watch him. So I planned my day around him being with her and then had to cancel a D&D game in the middle of the session because she couldn't respect my wishes. When I pick him up she starts yelling that I'm being ungrateful, she was doing a great job watching him and how much all her guests are loving him. She tells me that I'm unreasonable and rude. To top it off she tells me that she's going to tell my Baba about my behavior and that Baba will give me a talking to. What the duck, woman? I should have known better than to try and trust her. She insists on babysitting my dog every weekend. He has pancreatitis and can't eat fatty foods, he gets extremely sick. But she ignores me when I say this and continues to feed him bacon because he likes it. If she can't take care of a dog, how the hell did I think she could take care of a child? And the worst is how she keeps acting like a victim, saying I'm treating her unfairly. Man, I really needed to get this off my chest. Comments. One Redditor wrote, I'm just going to say, what an a-hole of a mother you have there. It's best never to leave your son with her, no matter how much he has grown in the future. On the wrong move and BAM, your mother is going to turn your son against you. Best to just leave her far away from your son. In my opinion, she has no right to call herself a grandmother since she hasn't loved you as a mom. You can't be a grandma without being a mom. OP replies, that's something I've been afraid of. She is a very manipulative person. When I was growing up she was cruel and I always thought she was a horrible person, but when I would meet her coworkers they would always gush at me about how my mom was the nicest person they knew. So she's very good at being two-faced and putting on a front. Another Redditor wrote, my ex-mother-in-law is like that too. Luckily, most people who aren't her have started to notice how horrible she really is. I'm not allowed to tell my children the truth about her, I was forced to sign a document stating I'm not to speak negatively about my ex and his family to keep the divorce peaceful, but I made sure she can't have them over at her house too often. The kids just spend more time at home, with me, with their dad, or with friends now. My youngest hasn't spent a night at her place since we moved away, because she thinks he's troublesome. He has ASD and can't handle her energy. She's loud and tries to make him do all sorts of things he doesn't like, doesn't listen to what he says, has no respect for him, and then complains he won't stop crying like a baby. My oldest no longer sleeps over at her place, because she found out that staying over at her best friends' houses is much more fun. Especially since those friends live in her dad's town. Story 2. Entitled Mom Can't Accept That Her 3-year-old Child Isn't a Prodigy. Hey everyone, last week, I started a job as a teacher. Perfect ground for finding entitled parents. Here's some background to start off with. I teach English to children, and while the school accepts children between 18 months and 12 years, my students are between the ages of 2 and 5. The school I work at only teaches English and has different levels based on your child's ability, where the teacher can use discretion to decide if the child can go faster or needs to slow down. Because of the coronavirus, the school also has mostly one-on-one lessons now, but because things are getting better where I am, the school also allows physical classes instead of online-only classes. I have this kid, we'll call him D. He's a 3-year-old boy with a local Chinese father and a mother who is traditionally Chinese. Where I live, English is the primary language of most people, though the command of English is a little skewed with plenty of slang. Dee's father could speak in Mandarin to his wife, our entitled mom. Entitled mom, however, could not speak any English at all and was Mandarin speaking only. This is where problem number 1 is. While I am local Chinese, I only grew up with English-speaking parents and grandparents, which meant I have almost no command of Mandarin even though I studied it as a second language for 12 years. Once I was out of school, my brain wrung out any knowledge of Mandarin like water out of a sponge. I can speak it at a barely conversational level, but can't explain anything in depth. The second lesson D came for was also my first day working there. While I was briefed on entitled mom as she had been the one to sign D up for lessons, I was informed by my coworker that Dee's father would be the one dropping him off and picking him up. This was good news for me, because when we let the child go at the end of the lesson, we take a few minutes to go through with the parents/guardians on what the child learned, what they did well, and what they can improve on, along with any recommendations for them like speeding up or slowing down. It's hard for me to explain any of that in Mandarin, so if Dee's father was the one coming to pick him up, then talking to him was simple. Unfortunately for me, that was absolutely not the case. On Dee's first lesson with me, entitled mom was the one to drop him off. He's only 3 years old, so we were doing a foundation class with him where we basically taught him 1 letter per hour-long class, how to say and write it, what sound the letter makes, and some simple words that start with said letter. Given that was his first time seeing me, he was almost entirely unresponsive to anything I said. He kept trying to go out and find entitled mom. He would want me to open the door, and when I wouldn't because he couldn't just be running off, he'd try to shove his fingers in the gap in the door. He would not repeat after me or mimic my actions, and overall did not manage to learn much. I did manage to get him to say the 4 words that started with the letter B, but that was about all we managed to do in that hour. For all my Southeast Asian people out there, you know how our parents can be. You all also know traditional Chinese parents are even worse, and entitled mom was just horrid. When I let Dee out to go back to entitled mom, she was at first cordial, asking how he did in the class and what he learned. I explained to her that because this was Dee's first lesson with me, he wasn't as responsive, but that he did manage to say the 4 B words taught to him. Now during classes, we have 4 flashcards with the words they're supposed to learn, and we give these cards to the parents to keep in case they want to revise with their child at home. I prefer to give the cards to the kids to hold to reinforce that it's their responsibility to keep the cards safe. Plus, it helps them develop their motor skills when they have to hold stuff. When I gave Dee his flashcards, entitled mom snatched it out of his hand and immediately pointed to the first one, Bubbles, demanding loudly for him to say the word. Since Dee was no longer in an environment where it was just me and him, he clammed up and wouldn't say anything. Entitled mom saw that as my failure. Cue our first terrible conversation. You already know who entitled Mom and D are, and who me is. I don't need to explain that. This conversation was in Mandarin, with me speaking in broken Mandarin. As a side note, I can understand Mandarin but can't speak it. Another side note, parents aren't allowed to be in the classroom during lesson time. Entitled Mom, what does this card say? Entitled Mom, jabbing her finger into the card, what does it say? When D doesn't respond, I get a death glare from Entitled Mom. Entitled Mom, why doesn't he know how to say it?
What do he pay you for?
Me, ma'am, since this was his first lesson with me, I think he was shy and we didn't manage to get far in the material today. I assure you that. Entitled Mom, what do I pay you for? I sent him here so he could learn English. Entitled Mom glares at D and demands that he say bubbles again, but D is entirely clammed up and just shakes his head. Me, look ma'am, you need to understand that it was his first time seeing me, and he's 3 years old. He was able to copy what I said during class and point at the pictures associated with words. Entitled Mom, then why can't he say it? D, tell me what this card says. Me, possibly because we're no longer in a quiet environment where it's just him with a teacher? He should warm up to me soon within the next class or two and become more receptive to the lessons. I'm sorry if the class today wasn't up to your standards, but please understand it is his first time with me. Entitled Mom snorts at my comment, grabs D and stalks off. I shared some words with my coworkers, mostly us bad-mouthing about Entitled Mom and my mentor confirming that she was just like that during Dee's very first lesson at the school with her. That concluded my first time meeting Entitled Mom, but oh no, we're not quite done. Now it's time for today's lesson. She was even more horrible this time. She showed up 10 minutes late, thankfully with Dee's father too, and released Dee into my care. Today, I taught him the letter C, including the words car, cat, cow, and crab. He was a lot more receptive now that I figured out that he was more into physical actions and was able to say all 4 words, plus match the words to the pictures. The class itself was fun, but releasing him to his parents was not. Since Dee's dad was around, I spoke to him almost exclusively. I explained to him that Dee was doing well and became a lot more receptive to me and my lessons, but struggled with his penmanship since he couldn't get a good grip on a crayon and had a very light touch, so his movements were shaky. I also explained that he struggled to say car sometimes, since he mixed up how it sounded with cow, but Dee's dad was very understanding. I recommended he guide Dee in how to properly hold a pencil at home, and Dee's dad relayed all this in Mandarin to Entitled Mom. Entitled Mom looked angrily at me when Dee's dad mentioned to her my comments about Dee not being able to hold a crayon properly, but said nothing. The school also gives the child the activity book to bring home, and Dee's book today had a page with a car drawing you to cut out. My coworker had cut out the entire page so she could cut out the car itself with ease, and the car was colored in by Dee. Entitled Mom only noticed the bit of the page that was still in the book, and blew her fuse.
Entitled Mom, where is this page? How can you give him such a terrible book? Huh? Where is the page? Why did you give my son something so terribly made? Me, ma'am, that page was cut out because there's a paper car cutout we needed to use. Here, the car is right here. I flipped the book over to the front page, where Dee's messily colored car cutout was tucked between the cover and the first page. Entitled Mom's rage subsided a little, but she gave me the nastiest death glare. Entitled Mom, oh, so he couldn't even color it properly. Humph. I wonder why I'm even paying you when you can't teach Dee how to color a picture. Let me say, teaching children how to hold a pencil is not my job. It is the parents' duty, and if they only expect him to practice for an hour every Saturday, that's their problem. Sounds nasty, but it's true. At this point, I'm exclusively speaking to Dee's dad and barely even looking at Entitled Mom. She has also gone back to jabbing her finger at the flashcards, demanding that Dee say what the words are. Entitled Mom, shaking the car flashcard in Dee's face, say it. Say what this word is. Dee is visibly stressed, clutching his toy car and staring at Entitled Mom but saying nothing. I decided to intervene. Me pointing at Dee's toy car in his hands, Dee, do you know what that is? Dee immediately flashes me a big grin. De, car. I clap for him and give him a high five, offering entitled mom a smile that only makes her scowl deeper. Pretty sure her muzzle lines and crow's feet are permanent now. I also notice that any time she talks, Dee's dad looks at her with such tiredness in his eyes, like he's regretting his marriage now. I finished explaining to Dee's dad on my recommendations for him to practice his penmanship at home. He thanks me while entitled mom grabs Dee's wrist and yanks him off, stalking off like she's some femme fatale. The school admin apologizes to me for even convincing entitled mom to sign Dee up, saying he knew she was going to be trouble during the sign-up process. I just say it's fine, pack up and leave. Now 3 hours later, I'm sitting here writing this, thinking if she keeps her trash behavior up, she's going to grow up with a son that hates her. Can't believe I have to see her every Saturday now. I hope she pulls Dee out, even though I love him dearly. She is just going to keep making trouble every single week and find some reason to throw a shitstorm. Sorry this got so long, and thanks for reading. Being a teacher is just a great place for finding entitled moms like this, and I'm sure I'll have something new next week when I see her again. Edit, this really blew up, didn't it? Thank you all so much for your comments. I've been reading through each and every single one, and all the advice and love is really driving me to do better by Dee next time. You guys are right, I cannot let him down now because it's clear he won't get the love and attention he needs from her. I will do right by him. Love you all. Well, this is the end of these 2 interesting stories. So what you guys think about the entitled mother who thinks her son is a prodigy, and did OP in the second story make the right decision to keep her son away from her mother? Tell me about your thoughts and suggestions in the comment section below, or if you guys have an interesting story of your own you can share that as well. If you enjoyed the story, do like this video and subscribe to our channel. It is free for you guys and it gives us motivation to keep uploading these videos. You can watch these videos in the meantime. Hope you guys have a good day. Goodbye.